Olivier Goletti is going to be talking to us about subgoal learning integrated in an introductory programming course. Take it away.
Thank you. Hello everyone, so I'm Olivier Goletti. I'm in my 6th year of my PhD. This paper has been written with my two supervisors, Hermans and Felienne Hermans. Our goal is basically to try to improve tutors or undergraduate teaching assistants practice by training them with explicit strategies, and in this case subgoal learning, and this observational study present the context and what we observed. So in a nutshell, what we did is we did a mixed method study where we looked at our observation using inductive and deductive coding. So we tried to look at how the tutors were using subgoal learning when they were giving lab sessions. And to help them with this strategy, we integrated the strategy fully into the course. So that means that we integrated it in the material of the course. I will present it. Yeah, so this is part of a larger design research that is part of my PhD. So this is the last step that I'm presenting today. And basically we iterated on this design intervention that we did in the CS1 course through multiple iteration, going from more strategies to less strategies, and going from less UTAs involved in the experiment with all the UTAs, since it was integrated in the course material this time. So here are the research questions. I will come back to them later on. What you need to really understand is that what you want to do is to understand how tutors will apply a specific instructional strategy in their practice, because tutors are not expert teachers, and so we want to look at how we can give them pedagogical content knowledge to teaching programming, introductory programming, and so we looked at that from different angles. But let me first give you some element of context. So our CS1 course is 13 weeks long. We have around 600 students in that course. We introduce imperative and object-oriented programming in Python, but we try to not teach too many Python-specific stuff. So the goal is really to teach introductory programming, and it's based on a problem-based learning methodology. So what does that mean? It means that students need to go through some work on their own. So here is the design of a typical week of the course. So basically we start with a tutor briefing where we have all the UTAs and we explain them what are the concepts that we will see this week, what are the exercises that the students will go through, what are the typical pitfalls that they will encounter this week. Then there is an introductory lecture that is given by the teachers to all of the students. Then students go through a preparation phase where they have to read some theory and then to prepare some exercises. And during the first tutor session, this is a 1-hour session where the tutors will animate a lab session, and we will like share the answers that the students have prepared, and we look at, they define the answers, tutors might help them. Typically it's 24, 30 students and one tutor in a classroom. Then there is a small project that students have to solve by pair. So small implementation project on the concept of the week, and then this project, which is called realization, is handed out, and tutors have to go through the submissions to give an evaluation and give feedback on the second tutored session. And then a new lecture is wrapping up the week and starting up the new week. So we analyzed this course in one of 6 years ago. I analyzed this course through the lens of learning transfer, and came up to the conclusion that it might benefit from more explicit instructional programming strategies. By that I mean explicit strategies that show to students what they can do better, or at least teaching strategies that use evidence-based ways to teach better. So this would mean, for example, reducing cognitive load. It was mentioned in a prior presentation. I will explain why the strategy we chose does that, and promoting transfer, like how to reuse concepts into other exercises throughout the course. So the strategy we presented and integrated in the course is called subgoal learning. was proposed by Catrambon, and Laurent Margelieu proposed to introduce it in computing education. So basically it's based on worked examples where you want to show solved procedures to students, and in those solved procedure highlight the steps that goes together and label them with a subgoal. For example, for handling a file in Python, you would first open the file, then process the file, then close the file, handle exceptions. So those are labels that students can remember and reapply easily when they have another exercise with those kind of concepts that are used. So here is an example of subgoals that we created. You have the labels and the details of the solving procedure on the left, and then on the right you have what we expect tutors to do, which means reusing the labels. Here it's in French, but basically doing code annotations on the blackboard, highlighting the labels, mentioning them to the students so that they can remember those subgoals, and it will help highlight those generic steps and like lower the cognitive load when they want to reuse the file reading or writing concept. Here a list of the different concepts for which we have subgoals. Some of them are adapted from Laurent's work, but others we derived ourselves. We'll not go through the whole list, but we can talk about it later if you want. So here are examples of tutors, UTAs working with subgoals in the classroom. So for example, here you can see that he's circling some class elements in a code on the blackboard. Here he's annotating some lines of code with labels on the blackboard. So those are examples of UTAs using the strategy. So what we did is we trained those tutors with the strategy. I modeled the strategy to the tutors before the beginning of the course, gave them some handout. I handed them the instruction on how to use the strategy, showed them how to use it. The information was informed by previous iteration of my research. We integrated it in the course. I will explain just after. And we did also follow-up meetings where we could discuss how they use the strategy in class and what was the difficulties for applying the strategy, etc. So here is the same diagram you've seen before with indications on where we integrated the strategy. So for example, in tutor briefing, we would remind to the tutors what are the labels of the concepts that they see this week so that they can reuse and mention them during the lab sessions. We integrated the presentation of the labels in the slides of the lecturers, of the professors. In the preparation phase, so in the exercises, assignments that they receive, there are some prompts towards the labels so that they can see again those labels for the initial exercises, and then we fade that out so that they don't stick all the time with those labels. In the tutored session, again, this was part of the research question, so that's what we wanted to observe. Will tutors use more the strategy or better the strategy if we help them with all this integration? Okay, let's go. So observation was 21 tutors that we followed. We hired 6 observers. I trained the observers to go in the classroom, do some recordings of the UTAs practice. We coded the recording segments, and we analyzed that based on the definition of the strategy. So we did more than 62 observations, not counting those that were just meant as training for the observers, and also so that UTAs could get used to being observed, to try to mitigate the fact that the UTAs are being observed. So this also means more than 62 hours of video to analyze, and so the observers helped me to analyze those videos, obviously, because I trained them. I gave them a code book so that they could do deductive coding based on the codes I gave them that came from previous research. So one of the tools I used is fidelity of implementation. It's a tool that comes from education change literature. Basically, it looks at how an innovation is implemented by practitioners in education, And so we derived a list of criteria. You don't need to read all the stuff, but maybe just the bold is interesting. So we have 4 main criteria. The first one is that the catalog, so the list of all the labels that is available also to students, is mentioned during the practice of the tutors. The tutors can propose walked examples. Then they will mention some of the subgoals, with or without the labels, one or all the subgoals, depending whether they are focusing on one specific aspect of using a concept or all of them. And then the solving procedure is reused with students based on the subgoals and the solving procedure. We also defined a strong use of the strategy, meaning that if tutors were using and mentioning explicitly the labels, or if they were using more than one criteria, we considered that it was a strong use of the strategy. So the results, I will go through each question, research question, specify the methods I used, and give some results. Obviously, more is in the paper. I like to give quotes, etc. in the paper. I have no real time to do it now, so this is sad, but you can read the paper. This is a teaser. So the effects of the integration itself, we did that, so like I said, through deductive and deductive coding, and by counting the number of times we saw the strategy was used. So here are the 21 tutors, and the number of times they used the strategy per session. And so the stronger colors are for the stronger used, and the lighter color are for use where they used only one criteria, or if they didn't mention the labels. So the mean is that we have nearly 4 use of the strategy per session per tutor, and for stronger use it's nearly 2. And we don't have differences between the audiences, so I didn't speak about the audiences, but I didn't change my graph. But so basically we have 3 different audiences, and there is no real difference how tutors would use the strategy with them. We looked again at what triggers strategy use for tutors. So you have 3 categories of triggers. Either the strategy is used by choice from the UTAs, let's say, so because they want to introduce a concept, or before starting an exercise, they want to remind the students about the steps to go through to use that specific concept. So this is maybe nearly half the time. Then exercises, the prompts that we integrated in the course. So if you solve an exercise and there are prompts of the strategy in the exercise, of course it will help you to use the strategy. So that's 1/4 of the use that are triggered by that. And then the rest is students asking for questions or struggling, and then UTAs would use the strategy to help them in that moment. So RQ2 was looking at the fidelity of implementation criteria. So again, this is more deductive coding, because the fidelity of implementation criteria were already existing before. So here they are again. So it's a bit difficult for you to know which one is which, but what you can see here, that most often the SL3, which was mentioning the subgoals, is used alone, which is in a way a bit sad. It's mostly used to explain a single subgoal that you can see, because SL3A is the most used of the SL3 criteria. So this is also not the strongest use we can hope for. The strongest use is when multiple criteria are used, or when the SL3 with a L are used, because that means that tutors would mention explicitly the label. And SL3 was more used with the SL2, which was doing a worked example. So this is interesting also. Why is it interesting? Because usually UTAs are not prone to use or show worked examples. They are always told that they shouldn't give solutions to students, so I'm happy when I say that they give worked examples. And then can we try to classify somehow the UTAs usage of the strategy based on their observed usage and the self-reported opinion they have on their usage, because we ask them through surveys to rate their familiarity and frequency of use through Likert scaled questions and also through open questions. And so we discovered that when they reported familiarity and frequency of use for specific concepts, there is a correlation between those two. So we can see that the reported familiarity and the reported frequency correlate with each other, which kind of makes sense. But maybe what's more interesting is that the strong use ratio of a specific tutor, meaning how often they would use a stronger version of the strategy versus a lesser strong use of the strategy, that ratio is also linked. It's a moderate correlation, but with the reported frequency. That means if they think that they are using it more, usually that means that they will use it better, also stronger. That is cool. So the conclusion of this work is we can observe the effect of integrating the strategy in the course, especially the exercise prompts helped, the training and the follow-up sessions. This is also kind of the result of my thesis. As the course progressed, also we see that tutors will use more strategy as the course progressed, meaning that they need some kind of time to get used to using the strategy, maybe hearing other feedback. So those two correlations were interesting also, and then this is more analysis, qualitative analysis, but they used more the subgoal learning strategy to introduce new concepts that are more structured, like for example the reading of files, and for advanced concepts as opposed to like writing an assignment. So those are the results. Thank you.
Thank you, great talk. So we have time for some questions, and again, the speaker for the next talk can start getting set up as we do that. Questions for Olivier?
Thank you for the talk. I'm curious, did you ever detect or did you look at how often the undergraduate tutors would just kind of give up and solve the problem for the student?
So I have the recording. I could go through it again and code for it.
It would be interesting. Right,
yeah. So usually they do that at the end, at the end of a session, if they didn't have the time. But they are used to the fact that there are more exercises than what they have time to do in a session. So they are used to not solve everything. So I'm just giving my gut feeling here, but so as they are trained to not give too many answers too easily, I guess they would not do it. So yeah, I don't have a number to give you. Interesting question though.
Other questions?
So the pedagogy that you outlined provides some type of scaffolding for the students to follow, correct?
Exact.
And what I'm missing from your talk is like related work. So one of the best known or effective pedagogic tools is the design recipe. And so I'm kind of curious, can you compare this to a design recipe based approach?
Yeah, so you talked about it just before, and I'm not familiar with the work, but what I know is that how you describe it to me look like goals and plans and stuff like that, like how you want to teach the students specific patterns that they can reuse when they're
type-driven design.
Yeah. And so I think it's kind of similar indeed. So the idea here is exactly to do that, to highlight what is the pattern in the use of the concept and to allow students to reuse that in other contexts. So in a way it looks similar, but I'm not familiar enough to be assertive.
So my advice would be that you should take a look at that work.
Yep.
So that you can compare and contrast.
Okay.
Okay.
Will do. Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, so I have a few questions of my own while we get set up for the next talk. So one of the things that's been kind of coming up in coffee breaks and informal discussions is kind of this desire to make sure there's a place for qualitative research in the SPLASH community. And one thing I appreciate in this paper and talk is you go into some detail of having a pretty well documented kind of what goes into your qualitative methodology. And so, what advice would you have, or what maybe lessons have you learned through that experience to share with the community on how to do the best qualitative research we can?
I have a whole chapter on this in my dissertation, so I think
you can always send me a link.
Yeah, but quick answer. I think we should not be afraid to mix both methods. I've been kind of practical to do this. So when you want to count things, it's all right to do so. If you want to understand things, it's also all right to do so. So use qualitative methods if you want to deeply understand small details. My first published paper was with 4 UTAs, but I had the occasion to go into interviews with them and understand the thought process, and that allowed me to refine my process and to go towards more large-scale implementation and maybe more quantitative results. So you should mix them. They feed on each other and it helps.
Thank you. Great answer. So one more round for the speaker.